joining us on today's Fast Performance Podcast. The Fast Performance Podcast is brought to you by Kaiser, the power in human performance. On today's episode, we sit down with Tyler Christiansen. Tyler has nearly 2 decades of experience stemming from being a former soldier to working as the department head for the NSCA's Tactical Strength Conditioning, and now works within the military in human performance. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we appreciate you joining us.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Fast Performance Podcast. I am your host today, Joel Rather, and with me sitting in today is Scott Long, who is our multi-talented co-host as well as podcast facilitator and amongst a whole host of other things. So Scotty, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to be here.
Maybe a slight upgrade in terms of the vanity side of things from
JC.
JC.
Way better looking.
Yeah, so we'll deal with that. But we are going to jump right into it today because we have a lot of stuff that I'm excited to be able to fire away at our guest today. And our guest is a friend, colleague, and fellow professional, good friend of mine, Tyler Christiansen. Tyler is a veteran soldier currently working as the Human Performance Director for Special Warfare Training Group Wing. He has worked around 20 years in tactical athletes as well as special operations, fire, EMS, and law enforcement communities, including working as the Tactical Strength and Conditioning Program Manager at the NSCA. And Tyler and I have some pretty long roots there, which include 7 Special Forces Group, 10 Special Forces Group, Special Missions Unit in the greater D.C. area, as well as an exercise physiologist at the Army Physical Fitness Research Institute as a contractor in Baghdad, Iraq. So in addition to that, he has worked with all types of sports as well, including work at the Iowa State University, Illinois State University, and also with Colorado Rockies. So he's a certified strength conditioning specialist with distinction, a tactical strength and conditioning facilitator with distinction, and a registered strength and conditioning coach with distinction. And lastly, but not least, he says that I and JC, as well as Scott, are okay by his book. So with that intro alone, I'm telling you right there, that's enough verification for me to feel good about myself, giving you Tyler's background. So
I just won right there. Like, hey, Scott, you were in there too.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
Since JC's not in, he's not in that. Joel, I was honestly wondering if you would read that.
I had to. I mean, you put it in there. I had to. I mean, I figured, why not? I mean, if I'm okay, following that up to be part of the bio, that's just amazing. So how's it going today? Appreciate your time. I know how you've been super, super busy and we don't keep up enough, but how are things with you?
Things have been like, we haven't shut down during COVID at all. Where I work at well, one thing I want to clarify, like, we're having an open conversation here that I am not representing the DOD, the Air Force, anything like that. Right. I'm here. All the opinions are my own. So with that said, we have not shut down training whatsoever in our pipeline since the start of COVID. Our big thing is, because that will have a ripple effect for years to come. So we continue training. Outside of that, we've been developing. We're like, imagine a big organization, and we are a startup organization. Instead of starting as a small company, we went straight to the organization, and so we're in that process of rebuilding. So, as you said, it's been busy. We'll just leave it right there.
Yeah, well, and I know that for you, some of the things that were amongst a lot of moving parts, some of the things that were so critical, I think, in the early onset for you, number one is establishing your staff, and I think you're getting close there. You've got a tremendous staff down there, guys that have, literally, like, we're talking about almost 100 years worth of combined experience, which I would say would be probably rival any place you could imagine in our field. And
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty awesome. And then as well as, as you start to install and get things kind of how you want them positioned is facilities. I know it's been a huge part of trying to make sure that between just training and whatnot is that the resources and all the things behind what you put in place with staff as well as facilities go. Talk to us a little bit about, kind of how that process was for you. Obviously you don't have to give specifics about things, but like, how did you kind of go about like, man, this is where I've got to start. And, you're looking down this telescope that's way out ahead of you of, how you envision trying to get kind of all of those pieces in place.
Yeah. So, the organization, as a human performance director, people think like the director is standing on the island by themselves. I have my counterparts that are in the Air Force. So my boss is a colonel. So it's not your traditional sports sense where I'm as the director, therefore I command from. I sit at a group setting, sometimes a wing, sometimes a group. It's changed in the last 6 months, but currently I'm sitting at the group. So I'm getting the cart in front of the horse here. So you have a wing, then you have a group, then you have a squadron, and then you have a flight. So as a group asset, like I can help influence or give my opinion on a lot of things, but it's ultimately a squadron hiring authority for those things, right? So it's not your traditional sense where that your director makes all the hiring decisions and stuff like that. I influence the decision. I'm not the main influencer. I'm not that type of thing, because imagine you have a corporation, as I mentioned earlier, right? And then you have these subset stores underneath, and we've got, I think, 7 to 9 different locations across the U.S. So I can't tell, and we'll just use Walmart as an example. I can't tell Walmart out in, North Carolina who they have to hire for their people. Right. I can give my inputs on that stuff. So,
sure.
So with the influence of people, that, and then I'm not going to go down that path. But yeah, we had some hiring problems at the beginning, but we got those ironed out and started getting the right people on board. You talked about our experience. Mike Clark, like Chicago Bears, Chiefs, Seattle Seahawks. Like I was doing some paperwork for him, and I hope Mike doesn't get after me after this, but he was coaching 2 years before I was born. He started in 79. I was born in 81. Like, I'm saying this in the vast amount of experience that we have right there with that person. And it's funny, some people, when they hear, oh, you're hiring some of the older guys, mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you? Right? Like, yeah. Mike has so much, and it should be a concern of anybody, like, hey, we got to make sure that they're not stuck in a rut and stuff like that. Yeah. No, talking with Mike is like, I'm going to mess up the name. I'm becoming stagnant, we'll say that, as a desk jockey. But like, I'm talking to Mike about all the different technology that we're using this and stuff. And then he's like, yeah, I know that. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
Right. Well, I think that's an interesting dynamic too, because just talking about that in itself, which is, I've seen this, like, for example, I had a colleague of mine and someone that as well, who was, in a position where a new staff was being hired for, installed on an NFL team, and, specifics aren't important, but, they came in and said, yeah, we really just want to hire some younger guys. We want some new blood and whatever. So, to hear you say that, I think there are some interesting dynamics where you look at it and say, yes, there are instances where, you get someone who's been around for so long and they find that, like, this is how I do it and this is how I'm always going to do it. And, as long as I'm doing it, this is the way it's going to be. And, there are definitely pitfalls in that. But I think as you look through that, it's finding those that as you, go through that process is figure out, like, how have they evolved? How do they think today compared to how they did, years ago? And what are those experiences experiences and time brought them to today, where, yeah, if you have someone who's capable of seeing things and evolving in how they think over the course of their career, yeah, I mean, I'm taking that guy any day of the week over, and there's good and bad, right? There's nothing wrong with a young, motivated person who's, super enthusiastic and whatnot, but definitely an interesting dynamic. And when you look at leadership and how they kind of view some of those things, you find yourself in these battles where, they can both have such benefit, but at the end of the day, determining which one is going to be the most, probably proper fit when you, again, look kind of at the bigger picture. So
yeah, and I think that's a really good piece of tidbit of advice too, because as a younger coach or sports performance professional, I feel like there's a fire in young professionals where they're like, shoot, man, I've been certified for 5 or 6 years, like, and I'm not in the NFL yet. Like, what's the deal? And like, I'm gonna be too old for these guys once I get 32, 33, 35.
Right.
I'm gonna be stuck where I'm at.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of touched on something a little bit that I wanted to get into also, which was technology. And I know that you guys have are in the process, and this massive mountain of things that you're jumping on in terms of technology. And tell me a little bit about maybe how that process has gone for you, which I think we've had this in previous podcasts where we've talked about technology. We say, well, is it good? Is it bad? Right. And obviously when you think about from your perspective of the installation of some of these things, number one is, how did you determine, what you were going to try and accomplish with the use of technology, right? What are the things that were most important to you in that, in terms of how are we going to utilize it? And then most importantly is, now that you've kind of done some of that, what are those things yielding to you in terms of information and how you're using it?
Yeah. So to give a little history to this, we have Chief Smith, and this is the chief that set up our preparatory program that a lot of people have heard about, for being a PJ, pararescue. For being a PJ and the system that he set up there with all the technology integrated, amazing. Like that had foresight, that had a bunch of different things. And then it's the side of he's leaning forward into the future of how we can lead from the front with utilizing technology, right?
Right.
So what he did was amazing. Okay. And the technology they integrated, and even like his vision that he left, he's no longer in that position. He's now sitting up at the wing, managing our Smartabase system, which we'll get into later. But the aspect that as a PJ, he's a chief, he's a high-ranking senior enlisted individual, but he had Smartabase, Dari. We got the year in gravity, zero gravity, or whatever it's called. We've got Sparta plates. We've got basically all the expensive tech. Zephyr. Can't forget about Zephyr. And there's a few other ones that I'm probably forgetting. Yes, we are collecting a lot of data, and it's going to Smartabase. Okay. Where we're trying to get to is to clean up that information. Data alone creates a lot of noise.
Yeah, for sure.
Until it's refined down, it doesn't really mean anything. So with that said, what Chief Smith did there was amazing. However, what we're trying to move to, so he's capturing information to see what we did. What I'm moving to is, okay, let's plan on the front side. Right. Once we plan on the front side, then we move into what Chief Smith created. Let's capture the info. Right. Then on the back side, we have a research flight here too. So as soon as that information is caught, it's sent to our research flight. So we can, we're looking towards the future with our planning process. We're capturing the moment, and then we're looking back at what we did. And I think that will help us get to the future. The aspect that there's some people are like, well, you're capturing too much information. It doesn't matter. You know what? If I'm giving more information to my coaches than they need, it's fine. So that it doesn't matter. If I'm capturing too much information and then utilizing that information to dictate where my coaches go, then that could be a problem, right?
Right.
I will say there has been a lot of lesson learned on these the things that we're doing, and that this is going to be like breaking news all across the internet. Guess what? Advertisers lie. Like,
No.
you can, hey, we decrease injuries by 85%.
Right.
Okay. Right. How is that? How is that? Like, even before we start to, it's like fundamentally, I don't know anything about your product, but that's not true. How can you predict injuries?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's, it's such an interesting piece, because when you look at how technology is utilized today, one of the things that you cannot replace is the human element. And I think that, one piece of that is, number one, is the coaching side of it still requires a human element. Data cannot coach, right?
Right.
The other side of it is the operator is still a human being, and there are tons of errors and flaws that are going to exist in either daily life, nuances within so many things that are going to never quite give you a linear picture that is going to equate to eminent success. And the hard part with all of that is as you said, understanding how the technology is a viable and useful tool, and then taking the other side of that and ensuring that we're using it in a manner, because like you hit it perfectly. There is a ton of noise. We can get lost in data and lose sight of what happens on a day-to-day basis, the human element behind all of it. What's been some of your kind of experiences with those things? And as you said, like, I'm sure you've narrowed some of this stuff down, and I know that you mentioned something like just hundreds and hundreds of data points and things like that. How does that look for you now? How far down the road from where you guys started, like, how has that been simplified maybe, or has it been?
It has not. We're doing the review process of all those data points now. So as I mentioned, we were capturing data, and then we run it through Smartabase algorithms and stuff like that. And then that would kind of give us a snapshot of like, hey, we're going this way, we're doing this, right? Those type of pat on the back type stuff. Well, we got a research flight in place. So we have an epidemiologist. We have, excuse me. What's funny? Caveat here real quick. Coffee. It's allergy season here in Texas. And I got a simple little, when you're in the grocery store and you cough, you get the look of death.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore, dude. It's unacceptable.
And sneeze,
I'm worried being this close to you now after that.
Well, we have the monitor, which we're looking at you 6 feet apart. So
yeah,
perfect. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
So we get all these pieces, and we start pushing forward and tracking the data and stuff like that. But we're finding out that now that we got the research and flight in place, it's like, well, no, it doesn't do that at all. There's no correlation to anything that we're doing. All the different variables we're collecting. Like, I'm not gonna talk about specific equipment, but we'll say there's some high dollar items on our budget likely won't be there next year.
Right.
As we're starting to find out, like, as I said, like, people, like, advertisers lie. The supplement companies come into the persona of the supplement company 160%, increase now within the technology industry, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficult part. Look at what's happening within our industry. There's now a sports science track that exists even within the NSCA. I think they're getting ready to produce a textbook with that, and the interesting part is there's now another avenue, another tract, another person who becomes a professional in that neighborhood. You know, I look at myself and I always laugh, and people say, like, "Oh, well, what do you use?" And I'm like, my eyeballs. And I mean, like, I've never been in a position where technology has been afforded or a luxury to me to be able to use a ton of. And I think that's still okay. You know, I think there's some needs and wants there. And we talk about how there's some possibilities where those can be hindrances, where people rely on some of that stuff too much, as opposed to what we talked about, the human element, right? But it's totally understandable. So let's maybe shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, you know, looking at your experience and your background. You know, you and I spent a bunch of time together at the NSCA. We were part of, you asked me when you were, managing the TSAC program to kickstart and help with what we did and still exists today, the facilitator course and some of those things. How do you see from, you know, going clear back to your days as a contractor, and then your time at the NSCA, and then working, you know, in your capacity now, like, what do you think have been some of the most critical evolutions that have happened to date in terms of where, you know, realistically a very short an acute amount of time has been part of this field, if you will, of tactical strength conditioning today, and then, you know, looking forward, like, where are we still missing the mark?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. We'll start with
intentionally
one of the important aspects of, I think, when I was a younger coach that helped me grow was Joel and I had a cubicle. I think they're diagonal to each other.
They were diagonal, yes. Yeah.
Yes, and we'd take rubber bands, we'd shoot them at the ceiling tile, and try to hit the other person.
This is all allegedly.
No, I'll go on the record. I'll sign an affidavit.
Oh, damn. I guess that puts me right in the crosshairs.
Oh no. This, the whole tactical strength and conditioning element was born in, and you can argue like, well, I was training back in then, type of crap, right? But the true kind of movement started, 2007, 2008?
Yep.
So I'm not a matheologist. We're dealing with a 13-year-old that still has not matured.
Which are usually a complete pain in the butt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a baby. Yeah. And so, we need to foster this, and as leaders in the community, we need to kind of steer it in the same direction. We constantly, in my opinion, keep getting hijacked by, we'll just go to specificity, right?
Yeah.
By the commercial industry saying, hey, we're tactical because look, we're working out in gear. We're that type of shit. Like it can we cuss?
Oh yeah.
I think you just did.
Okay.
I think you
just did. I know I did, but I don't know if I did.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
But,
there's a button and you just click that says not for kids. And we're good now.
But you go into specificity. The advertising world, or if you do a Google search, says specificity for the tactical community is you have to put your gas mask on. You got to put full kit. When is the last time you saw a freaking NFL player or a collegiate football player go into the weight room with their pads on?
That's a really great point.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. What the hell are we doing? But yet that's what everybody tends to think. Like, we need to work in our gear. No, it's the time outside of the gear that you develop that physiological profile or that platform for that technical or that tactical professional to present their technical and tactical skills, right? That's what it's all about. But we get people lost at the foundation of what specificity is. Yeah. And it's funny. I was there once, so I'm not going to stand on my soapbox and say it was never me. Is when I was in DC working for that special mission unit. When was that?
2013?
No, 2010. 2009, 2009, 10, right in there. Okay. So I was working for the special mission unit, NSCA. I just left the NSCA and went out there. Well, they called and said, "Hey, do you want to do a presentation? We'd like you to do a presentation on close quarter combat." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I went down the rabbit hole of like mimicking movements, showing how it's relevant, because now we can do a band. So I have a band here, and I'll do a pistol, squeeze and things like that. I'll do it. Basically, I just looked at a close quarter combat situation, and then I tried to replicate it in the presentation of all these different exercises. About halfway through developing that, I'm like, I'm an idiot. What the hell am I doing?
Yep.
And then I'm like, this stuff is fun to do and can be done, but that's not training. I'm just replicating movement. So there's actually, I don't know if it's up there. Anyways, like for an infantry soldier as prior infantry, their common core task is a book like this, right? They have a lot of different jobs they need to do. With that mindset of thinking of that is specificity, that means I'm focusing on page 426 out of 6,000, whatever it is, right? It just, okay, if we want to play that game, now you got like 4,000 other pages to be discussed if you want to talk about that level of specificity.
Right.
A lot of people forget that specificity is movement classification, energy system development. You get your strength qualities and joint angles and force vectors, and then what are your common injuries, right? That is specificity. And that is, in my opinion, what advertisement and young coaches are missing. Their specificity is not replicating movement.
Right. So. Yeah. And I agree. I think, I can't tell you how many times throughout teaching the practitioner's course where we get into that discussion, and there's always the picture of the firefighter who's has the breathing apparatus on and the whole 9 yards, and you go, please don't be that person, right? Like if you want them to be good at doing power cleans, if you want them to be good at deadlifting, they don't need their tanks on. Let's work on those qualities as you mentioned, and guess what? When they put that gear back on, you're creating a better vehicle to manage and operate in that gear. And I think that even as you mentioned, right, like using football as an example, right, like we have always been guilty in our field of getting really cute, getting too cutesy with things where it's like, oh, let's do this. And if we really get down to the science behind it, right, which is speed of movements and some of those things, like you can actually put yourself in a position where you're doing more harm than good if you're looking at patterning and things like that, where you're not going to enhance those patterns through that type of thinking or methodology. And so it's difficult, but very interesting. So in saying that, like, what do you envision are still the things that as we move forward, because I like most things, and as you said, being a teenager, as we're going to call it now, and in the field, as far as the length of time that we've been kind of working in this tactical space and building and growing as a profession in that tactical space, there's a lot that still needs to be done, right? And a lot that still needs to be accomplished. And I think one of the things that I find is so challenging maybe in that, and I've talked about this with programming for one, but the other part is that getting out the textbook was a huge part. I think that the NSCA's tactical strength conditioning textbook.
Shout out to Brent Alvar.
Brent Alvar, if you're watching, thank you. And Brent's a good friend of ours. But that was the first step. But still, one of the things I find to be such a challenge is that as you move from base to base, or even branch to branch, or whatever that might be, even within all the different armed forces, as well as you get into fire and you get into law enforcement, whatever, is there's this like closed, tight-lipped and ownership that's still behind it that I think can be a real limiting factor. How have you seen some of those things, over the course of being in a lot of different places? Like, where are we making progress there? Like, I think that it's hard to look at it and say, this is what you should do to be, an optimal operator in, whatever your job capacity would be.
Oh man, that you and your loaded questions. So the aspect of, I think the tactical side is willing and open to it. However, I think they get burnt by the snake oil salesman, and therefore it's like you got a receiving end, they're ready, but then they get burned by that snake oil person that said, hey, you see this study, you see this study, you see this study, you see this, I'm going to give this to you. And then they go in and they have no practical experience and end up just doing a disservice to the program.
Right.
So a lot of that right now. And then the aspect, like a lot of those individuals that burn them, they clearly, in my opinion, would probably have an egotistical problem of just going in, knowing the answer, and not actually listening to their problem. Right. Or observing, or, starting to work on that specificity type thing. They already have it set in their mind. Therefore, they go in with their objective and they end up hurting people. They end up, doing all these different things. Okay. And then you have individuals that come after them and they have the best intent in the world. They have, they're going to go in, listen, and figure things out and come up with a practical solution. But sometimes they're not given the opportunity because that first person before them burned the bridge, right?
Yeah.
So they're all of a sudden not going to listen. Like, in the environment, you're like, I messed up once. No one wants to mess up twice, right? First time, I'll take ownership. Second time, I got to put that ownership somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So it's very complex. Like, the science and the research absolutely helps us. But yet we have practitioners taking that and saying they can deliver on something they don't have the fundamental skills to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think as I think about that, especially, and even think about all the things that we've talked about so far. Number one being, let's talk about technology. Let's talk about the infancy of tactical strength conditioning as a whole. Let's talk about the people that, as you said, are looking at opportunities. And quite frankly, when you look especially from a perspective of money alone, there are so many people that say, oh, if I could just get latched onto this, if I could just get them to buy my product, if I could just get them to use this program or whatever, there's infinite money that's out there, right? And so,
especially for like tactical strength and conditioning, where you're dealing with the military spending, obviously the military budget is out there for public view, and so you get a lot of those folks that's like, oh man, they've got plenty of money, I can tap into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that becomes difficult. And as you said, you end up, one of those gets through a filter, it falls on its face, and all of a sudden, as you especially look through chain of command and stuff like that, who's answering to that, right? And so you end up being in tough positions where those guys are like, well, I can't let that happen again because that falls on me, right? And which leads me to my next question, which is, as we've kind of evolved over time, I know. Go ahead.
Hold on, I'm gonna interrupt your question. I apologize for this.
No.
But I think it needs to be touched on. The good thing is that the strength and conditioning, the sport strength and conditioning world, is all of a sudden having an eye-opening moment about the tactical strength and conditioning.
Oh, without
I think
question.
This is an important thing that we need to talk about. I'm not kidding you. I've had more conversations with directors and I'm talking top D1. I'm not talking like the director of Alabama or University of Iowa, those top paying jobs. But people that are doing significantly pretty well financially, they are constantly, I've got meeting after meeting. Next week, specifically, big D1 universities. I got 3 calls next week. I will say this per week. This has been going on for, I want to say, around the start of COVID. So since March, major universities are finding me on LinkedIn. They're connecting with somebody that knows me, and they want to know about this tactical strength and conditioning thing.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. There's a big shift coming.
Oh, for
and
sure.
And the good part is once because we have a bunch of jobs coming open, especially in the regular Army,
Oh, yeah.
that when those come open, all of a sudden you're not going to be able to pay somebody little to nothing to $26K to work 80 some hours a week
You got it.
at your university. So I've tweeted about it. I think before I left the NSCA, I'm like, this is coming in the next 2 to 3 years, and we're coming up on 3 years.
Yeah.
You and I talked about that. Like you and I have had that conversation big time, which is we've both been in a position where we worked in college athletics. You were in college athletics as well. And this paradigm, which is like you said, it's shifting and it's coming. The guys that have spent even a minuscule 1, 2, 3 years, there's a reason why the turnover at the collegiate level is as high as it is, because was at one point such a high profile, or a perceivably, I'll say, high profile position, and people go, oh man, that must be awesome. And they're like, oh, sure it is. All those hours I work and holidays I miss and I get paid $30,000 for, and I work 60 hours a week, which is more or less a microcosm of the first 10 years of my career.
And doesn't include the side job that you have to maintain to make.
Which I did.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Which I also had, right?
Yeah.
And so the interesting part, like you said, is as, you know, if you watched our podcast we had with Nate Palin, we talked about that, right? Which is what's going to happen in General Army. What are the projected possibility of the number of available jobs that are going to come up in the very, very near future? And obviously with the intent and hope that, you know, we're getting this thing closer to being correct, and the hiring process, which I think has been, you know, that maybe is a whole other podcast, but talking about how it's taken a long time to get things narrowed down, and as it gets closer to being, I won't say fine-tuned, but refined, that those jobs are all of a sudden going to turn college athletics on their head.
Yeah,
I firmly believe that.
Do you think that college athletics will recognize that and say, hey, like, you know, we're losing our top strength and conditioning coaches, our top athletic trainers to these other settings? Do you think that they'll respond in a positive manner, or do you think that they'll just keep cruising along with the status quo?
What do you think, Tyler? I know what my thought is.
You have I see 3 different COAs. COA 1 is that they turn a blind eye to it. That we, meaning the DOD, and again, I don't speak for them as a thing. The DOD will use college athletics like, hey, you're in school, you're getting your training. As soon as you're done, let me know and we'll take care of you. Okay? So they will rape and pillage. No, that's probably not a good thing in 2020 to say. I think they will
capitalize, maybe.
There we go. Thank you.
That's right. We can edit this stuff. It's okay.
All right. Yeah, we don't need me to get canceled. But I think that they will move quickly. If they don't move, then we will quickly just there'll be a revolving door for us. Right. COA 2, COA is course of action. Is I see them starting to recognize it and starting to do little pay bumps. But again, like if you do an hour by hour breakdown, hourly wage breakdown.
You don't want to do that, folks, if you're listening at home.
My coaches, let's just say GS 11, I think I think around here is around 75K in San Antonio. Lower cost of living, it's not too bad. Okay, so GS 11, which would be like an assistant strength coach, makes 75. So let people at home, and you need minimum 5 years of experience after you have that. and you can prove to us that you can do your job. And then you work 40 hours per week. Okay. So one, they give a little pay bump. Collegiate gives a little pay bump. Two, or the COA 3, is they fully recognize that this is happening and they go up and they match it. I doubt COA 3 is going to happen.
No chance.
I doubt COA 2 is going to happen. You always lead with what you think is going to happen first, or your first choice. So that's my COA 1.
Yeah, I think the only way that like COA 3 will happen is if the top universities reduce the pay of their biggest employees, which are the football coaches, who are making millions of dollars as a head football coach, and even like assistant football coaches are making $1 million. And
Yep.
And then you're turning around and saying that the strength and conditioning staff, the athletic training staff, is worth a fraction of that. And if you don't have strong kids, if you don't have healthy kids, you don't have a good football program.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into the paying of the players and stuff like that, but also you need to touch base about the college endowment, right? They're like, well, we don't have money. It's like working for a nonprofit, and they're like, you know what, we make –
It's got to equal zero.
Yep, it's got to equal zero, but well, that's what. But they make so much money. It's just at the end of the year, it needs to equal zero or close to whatever. But a lot of nonprofits use that as an aspect of saying, "Oh, we can't pay you. You know what? We can only afford $30,000." And it's like once you start to learn kind of the ins and outs of organizations and stuff like that, like they use that to their advantage. So colleges, nonprofits, things like that. And that's a completely different podcast. That probably needs to be like a conspiracy theory podcast somewhere.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And to me, I think about it and say, regardless of which one of those scenarios may happen, I think inevitably it's coming, as you said. And ultimately, the bottom line is, if they don't, meaning collegiate programs, if they don't make some type of acknowledgement or assessment or adjustment, you're going to end up with, especially at your average Division I, and as you move down in Division II and whatever, you're going to end up with struggling to find people that are going to take those jobs.
Yep.
And and as someone who's been vested in this industry for over 20 years now, like I look at it and say, that's a long time coming, knowing how hard and how many people have went through this industry who got burnt out, failed, went broke, moved on, took other jobs, changed fields entirely, and it's frustrating because when you think about looking at people that have master's degrees and certified and whatever, and the kind of money that they're making, just it doesn't match up with how much effort they've put into establishing themselves as professionals.
Stand by, Tyler. We lost your audio. I don't know if your headphones got unplugged there.
Connecting again.
There we go.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so yeah, I went like this because it's like all of a sudden I got a banner saying headphones, but I was like, I can still hear you guys and stuff. So, all right,
go. Yeah.
So
where were we at?
So basically, we were kind of tying up with Joel was saying that he's been in this for 20 years, and the times are coming, and there's just going to be a lot of people that are frustrated that have put in so many hours and so much money in their education and CEUs and time vested where a lot of people are frustrated with the profession as a whole, and now I think there's going to be this really great opportunity in the tactical setting that says, hey, like these folks are going to actually pay me for what I'm worth with a master's degree and with these certifications.
Yeah.
I think it's a good good stepping stone forward. And we're kind of seeing that in athletic training too, where a lot of folks, a lot of colleagues of mine are getting away from the collegiate setting and going to a private practice to work with like a physician. That's kind of a new threshold or a new area in athletic training. And same thing with like the industrial setting at, these big factories or warehouses or Amazon and stuff like that. Like there's more and more people that are making that transition that says like, hey man, I'm tired of these hours. I'm tired of dealing with, all these headaches that I'm getting paid pennies for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things so in 2000 and we'll say 10-ish, I was in Washington, D.C. as a contractor for the Special Mission Unit. And in Washington, D.C., I would think my salary was $60K. And some people are like, oh, well, that's good. In D.C., that's like $30K, right?
Right.
So I went to my employer at the time and I said, hey, like this, and this are the reasons why I want to discuss a pay raise. The official response was coaching was not about money. It's about passion. And this is coming from the employer. At that point, like this is 10 years ago, and that is embedded in my mind.
Yeah.
I've heard that too.
And so what I ended up doing is I originally gave him a 2-week notice, but because I was working for a military entity, I ended up giving him a month just because I cared about the entity.
Yeah.
Then I worked down at 7th Group. Then I ended up on my ass, got hit with that big government layoff in 2014, but that's when I ended up at the NSCA. And at the NSCA, I found myself in a position where I'm sitting on we'll just say pedestal. It's not, I don't think I'm on a pedestal, but
throne. I think it was a throne.
I have access to this audience, right?
Yeah.
And so we developed the practitioner course. And when I developed the practitioner course, Joel, you were part of this. When we developed that course, like I could have said, hey, Joel, we'll give you peanuts to deliver this. And you probably would have been like, I hate you, but yes, I'll do it. Right.
You're probably right.
But, and so let me clarify. The practitioner course is absolutely, I think it's a great tool to educate, and it gives a lot to the community.
Yeah.
Okay. But you have people on the front side teaching that, right? And typically when those guys on the front side, they get paid a couple hundred here and stuff like that. Like, and they're the ones that make the program successful. They're the face of the organization. I just put a system in place and then kicked it out to Joel and said, go do this. Just kidding.
And I did. And you did it. And I'm still there.
But let me ask you this, Joel. As a business, we'll talk business a little bit. Was it financially rewarding for you?
Without question.
I mean, we all understand that you're giving back to the community. We're educating.
Right.
We're absolutely giving back. But what no one talks about is, what about the people that are doing the education? How do we take care of them?
Yeah.
Right. So it's financially rewarding, and on the other side, it's rewarding that way.
Yeah.
So we have an industry that just preys on people to do things for a bottom dollar.
Yeah.
I get messages all the time. Hey, send me a program. Hey, send me a program. We have a devalued freaking industry. Start of COVID. What did everybody do? Hey, here's some programs. Hey, COVID workout.
Oh,
Everybody's setting it up.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more. I started seeing that where guys are like, oh, I'll send you a bunch of free programs, like just hit me up if you need a home workout. And I kind of went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If you guys can't work and you're incapable of running your business, or you're incapable of doing X, Y, and Z, now you're going to give away your services for free? Like, talk about devaluing, right? And I understand being good people, and I think that I always think back when, especially thinking about what is at the basis when you had the keynote speaker in San Diego. What's his name?
Dave Grossman.
Dave Grossman, and he talked about the physiology behind why people as first responders do what they do, and it is really scientifically from the basis of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, your employer goes, oh, hey, you don't do this for the money, you do it for the passion. And the unfortunate part is our entire industry has been based off of the fact that our inherent nature as strength and conditioning professionals, and anybody that's associated with that, athletic trainer or whatever else, is our mission is to help people. And our mission is that we want to contribute to success, enhancement, recovery, whatever that might be, for the betterment, right? And it has become almost a cancerous nature, whereas you said, you said, hey, Joel, would you do this for me? And in the past and years ago, it was like, well, of course I'm going to do that because it's an opportunity for me to, maybe get my name out there. It's maybe a way for me to become more recognized. And it has festered into this just, widespread epidemic of people just being willing to do things for nothing. And it's hard because it's going to take, and I look at athletic training, for example, and we've talked about this, where it's like there is a standardized level that you must achieve in order to become an athletic trainer. And they have established something that we as strength and conditioning professionals still don't have. And it's closer than it used to be, right? There's some things that are coming down the pipeline as far as like colleges must have CSCS, the Major League Baseball needs to have registered strength and conditioning coaches and those types of things. But it still hasn't gotten to the point where in order for us to see those salaries and the time of professionals that have experience in the background and whatever to get what their worth is, those standardized levels still don't exist.
So let me put this question out to you guys. Since we're talking about standards and tactical strength and conditioning, and kind of alluding to earlier where a lot of these folks from the colleges are potentially going to the tactical side, like, do you look at the TSAC certification as a absolute standard, or do you see a lot of folks saying, well, you've got your CSCS, you're good to go, or do you say like, no, you need your TSAC as well?
Yeah. So when I don't want to air out. Yeah. Okay. So when I came into the NSCA, there was a lot of confusion about what the TSAC-F certification was for.
Right.
Okay. And in that process, like, we'll say this. I had my CSCS back in 2005-ish, somewhere in there. So I haven't studied like the Krebs cycle and that type of stuff forever. I went through the TSAC-F review course, the online review course, once, and then I went and sat for the exam. Like, I just showed up and went in, and I will admit I'm a sloppy reader, meaning, like, which one is, unless they have it capitalized, I won't pick it up. Which one is not the right answer, right?
Yeah, that's why you and I get along so well.
But I go in to take the exam, and I think I got like a 97%, right? So the aspect that there's confusion. So the TSAC-F is meant for the infantry soldier, think of any job within the tactical community. Like, they have a main job. They also have this side job, and that's where TSAC-F comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
CSCS is the creme de la creme, and it's not looking to replace that, but to be able to notify, like, they've done master fitness trainer, they've done, a lot of different variants of that. So it's the certification of those people to say, hey, they have the fundamental knowledge to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Gotcha. I'm picking
Well,
up what
and
you're
I think
putting down,
the thing for, as you kind of mentioned, to relate it back to how our conversation started, which was like, you said, it's wing, it's group, it's, all that, right? Like, if you look at it in similar terms, your coaches and the guys that work for you are CSCS. And
Yes.
and when you get down to the squadron levels and below, where you're going to have guys within some of these groups that are still going to be tasked, that are active, that are, you know, soldiers and whatnot. They're like, hey, you're in charge of your group or whatever in terms of their fitness and their readiness and whatever else. Is the TSAC was always designed to make sure that those folks that are going to now answer, because we've established a better level of, you know, how the programs are being operated, you're going to answer to that CSCS.
Gotcha.
But we need those people below that to have some level of knowledge about why and how and what are you doing on a daily basis, so that when those coaches say, hey, this is what we're going to do, you can hand them a program, you can put them on a path, and they're capable of at least at a minimum understanding what all the basic levels of things are, so that they can go out and execute. Because in most cases, especially in the military, you are talking about thousands and thousands of people, and you can't hire a CSCS for every single one of those.
Gotcha.
It's just not feasible.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. So, you know, your education is your force multiplier, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I developed the TSAC, because I saw the need coming from the field. I got laid off, you know, so I was like, oh, I 100% know what the answer is. And I'll tell you, one of the big things I learned is, like, when you're on a platform, you utilize it for the greater good, right? So that's what I tried to do, is like, okay, this is the big need. So I kicked it out, or we all developed it, and kicked it out, and then just enhanced everything. And then now we just need to put a system in to support that course. Now that you're newly TSAC, we need an education course, CEUs and stuff like that, to be able to keep up with the needs of the DoD, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the interesting part with that too is, especially as you look at how things evolve within the military specifically, right? And it does exist as well in fire and things like that, where when you look at a lot of those people that are going to be TSAC, that are, you know, in the past were MFTs and things like that, and you look at them and say, well, that person has a very short lifespan even in that case, right? So it is a constant moving target. There is someone that within a year, within 2, within 3 is going to continue, just like you said, it's a turnstile that's always going to end up being back in that position. So the need to continue that and to continue the, you know, the support of that is going to stay there, because you're not going to put someone in one of those positions like, oh, hey, you're in charge of your group in terms of, you know, our readiness and whatever, and our fitness, our day to day. They're not going to be there forever. They're not planning on, and nor is the system within going to put them or leave them there for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years. It's not going to happen, right? There's an evolution to it.
Yep. So, yeah, it's this whole tactical thing is taking off. It's a massive project. I mean, you got the H2F, which we discussed, right?
Yeah.
Then we got the POTIF contract that's been established for, I think we're around 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. So we have that initiative moving. And with that, again, going back to, you know, standing on your soap, like when you get an opportunity to speak, you need to speak and do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're working at the NSCA. So that's why, you know, back in 2016, 17, somewhere in there, started working on the POTIF contract. I saw a lot of problems and disservices happening to the strength coach, and I'm not blaming a company. It might have been, you know, there's other things in the mix. I'm definitely not blaming a company. I just saw a lot of inefficiencies in that system of taking care of people.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's why I went after the POTIF contract. I was going to all these big organizations, you know, Lockheed and blah, blah, blah. I went across the board and like contacting my whole network to try to figure this out. And then finally I contacted a guy that put me in contact with KBR. And then we started working that process of winning that contract. And I'll tell you, like, I was not at the NSCA when the NSCA KBR is the prime, NSCA was just one of the subs. But I was down here working when I heard that news, and that was the greatest thing ever. So essentially, most everybody except for maybe the top 2, 3%, 10% earners or whatever, everybody got pay raises. They haven't had a pay raise in so long. They got, all these other benefits included in, so they're taken care of. Like, it's one of those things that you don't hear a lot about because no one wants to talk about it. But that's, when you're at the NSCA, when you're doing these things, that's why you're there, is to take care of the profession. Right. And I think that between the practitioner course and winning that contract, it's taking care of the profession.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and, not very often is it, do you have the opportunities, but, I think that, the amount, when I think of back to when we're shooting rubber bands over cubicles and things like that. And
so you admit to it now?
No, it's the word is out.
Okay.
The word is out,
right.
but he started it, of course, if we're going to act like teenagers. It is coming full circle and taking the amount of experiences that you've had in the field, I mean, even, and I don't know if we mentioned this, but, you were also a soldier as well. So, you have went through the gamut from service to profession to leadership, really, at this point, where the amount that you have facilitated in utilization of those experiences, and then really extrapolation of network and the amount of things that you have, really leveraged for, I think, where the profession is today, is so commendable. And, I know you're relatively humble in most cases, but I think that there's a lot to be said for what you've done to try and help position things to where they are today, not just where you are, but as across the board with your efforts from the NSCA to the TSAC course to, like you said, the POTF contract and all these other things. So it's awesome to see. I've been a bystander and a tag around guy.
You've been actively involved. Don't like if you're gonna stroke my ego, then you need to recognize your own too.
No.
Sorry, I got things popping up here. But the aspect of like Joel, who do I call when I'm not a single idea guy? Like, I like to say I was driving the bus with a herd of cats in it, and I just tried to drive it and keep everybody on the bus and kind of give us a vector. Like, I wasn't the one doing all that work. I was utilizing all you guys' expertise and letting you guys, lead the way. I just had a platform, the bus, to allow the people that I believe have the right, direction for the industry. I just got them all on the same bus and then let you guys. I just drove straight. You guys did the rest of the work.
Yeah, and I have something to follow up with that. So we talked about people kind of getting lost down the wrong track, or looking at the wrong whiz bang doodag. Like, can you tell or give our audience some folks to look up, or some work to look up if they're interested in learning about the proper things within the tactical strength world?
That's a great question. I mean, there's great coaches out there, but there's not a single source. Somebody wants to make, a few $1 million. There's your answer.
Right.
Like,
all right.
Figure out that. Like, yeah, I really don't. I mean, the NSCA is doing some work. A lot of people are doing a lot of little work and stuff like that. But I don't think anybody has the comprehensive answer yet, because, Joel said it's a teenager now, because I said,
right.
We've been alive for 13 years. But I think we have one of those 13-year-olds that, like, acts like he's like 7. Like, I think that's where we're at.
We need a Doogie Howser.
Yeah, we absolutely. Yeah, no, that's what we do need. Absolutely, that's what we need.
But I think it's also something too when you think about it, and I've said this for years when people ask that in just general strength conditioning, right? And I usually will say, well, your objective really really shouldn't be to find one source, and I've always been a big believer that, it's kind of the Bruce Lee method of, take that which is useful and resist that which is not, and exposing yourself to as many things as you can possibly find. Like I've had some really cool conversations with other people, like Mike Sanders for being one of them, right? And talking with Mike where he was like, oh yeah, we're always trying to find ways and methods to enhance what we do, and having some of those conversations, him telling me about a few really like completely unique trains of thought about like, well, what if we tried to do this stuff? What if we tried to do that stuff? And you go, wait a minute, like that's like way out there, and yet at the same time, it's trying to find things that are useful. And I think that's what our industry is based on. And I've always said for years, regardless of who you work with or around or whatever your focus is, like if there was a roadmap to any of this stuff, I mean, then they wouldn't need us. You just be like, this is how you train a pilot. This is how you train a soldier. This is how you train, and you'd be done with it. You'd be like, here you go. And just read that and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's twofold. One, Mike Clark and I had just had a conversation today, and we're developing a system that will basically, like Joel, if you were to make a program, like we have psychologists, we have dietitians, we have AT, PTs, OTs, we have spiritual, we have other coaches all in the mix. And essentially you have to make your program and then share it amongst the community so that they can therefore plan out what we call a course map, right? So we're planning, like if anywhere across our pipeline, any one day you can call me and say, hey, Tyler, what are the PJs doing on day 246 of their training schedule? And I'll pull it up and I'll tell you what the spiritual domain's doing that day, the strength coach, this. I'll tell you the strength coach's volume that's anticipated. And then after the day, I can tell you what the volume, like what was, planned and what actually happened.
Right.
Like we're putting that system in place.
Yeah.
So, but in this conversation with Mike Clark was, so we're putting this plan in place. That's going to expose people. Like back in my day, Joel, I think I sent you programs. You sent me programs. But I sent you programs to say, hey, beat this up. I sent Stephen Underwood programs saying, hey, beat this up.
Right.
Everybody that I respected in the industry, I'd kick them my program and then tell them to shoot holes in it and give the fundamental process, right?
Right.
So I enjoyed everything about that because I learned so much. But I think we're starting to turn into a community of like, no, this is my program.
Right.
We're going to go over here, and then no one can take that constructive criticism anymore.
Yeah, I alluded to that. That's what I was kind of alluding to earlier, right? It's that ownership piece. It's just like, this is how we do things, and like, oh, this is almost a proprietary nature to it. And I think that there's. The hard part is a lot of that comes from a business-minded perspective, right? As opposed to a growth-minded perspective. Not that you can't have growth-minded perspective in business, but it's like, well, if we're going to separate ourselves as being the best, then we can't share all this information,
right?
And those types of things. And there's a lot of other things that play into that, but I agree with that.
I agree with that, but Joel, how many, like you were one of the first ones that taught me to track my volume, to track, these different things. I think you sent me a wellness survey. This is back in like 2008, right?
Something like that, yeah.
But you passed those things to me and I kind of latched onto those, right? So let's ask both of you guys, Scott, Joel, how many coaches do you guys know that track their volume, their tonnage, their intensity all the way across their program? How many people work outside of a mesocycle? Like mesocycle meaning 3 weeks.
Yeah. Not many.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's part of what I'm bringing back to my programming. And we're a little bit different. We know what kids are doing on day one of training all the way to 378,000, whatever, right? We know exactly what they're doing. So there's no reason not to have a plan in place. Yes, things will change. That's fine. Like, if you don't have a program with a little chicken scratches and modifications, like something's probably wrong. But like we have an environment where we can track all those things, but no one does it anymore. and I'll be the first to admit, like at some of my previous spots, I didn't do it either because no one expected me to, so I didn't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sorry.
Yeah, no worries, man. And this has been a really fun conversation to sit in on, and obviously with Nate and Stefan and getting the thoughts of where this adolescent of tactical strength and conditioning is right now. And we would definitely love to have you on in the future as this realm grows, as this setting grows. And just want to take this time to say thank you for what you've done for our country and what you've done for strength and conditioning and stuff. And we look forward to having you on in the future.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I got up on my soapbox a lot today.
No, that's okay. That's why we'll have to have you back on.
I intended to try and accomplish that. So that was
you got me riled up.
I know. We know each other all too well, but no,
true.
it's good to catch up, man. Pumped to see all the things that you continue to do, and obviously tell all the guys down there that I know as well, and say hi to them. And we really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, and we'll look forward to maybe doing it again, and hopefully look forward to seeing you at some point too. So appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.